Move on. Number 3, SC 16-0511 Killingworth Turnpike Mill Pond LLC. Request for 1-year extension for the commencement of the project as requested by the property owner. Is there any correspondence?
There's just a letter from the First Selectman requesting the extension.
I'm happy to, yes, I'm happy to discuss it with the commission, pass the letter around as well.
Okay.
Line with that?
Clinton Planning and Zoning Commission from Bruce Farmer, First Selectman, Town of Clinton, Special Exception, SE 16-05 Mill Pond, 11 Killingworth Turnpike, Zone IDZ, date August 18, 2017. As you are undoubtedly aware, the developer for this project, Mill Pond Clinton LLC, has now withdrawn. The town is presently exploring many options and opportunities for how best to proceed. This may take some time involving new requests for proposals, RFPs. The original application for special exception was approved April 2016. The requirement of this approval per section 4.17.3 is that the work commenced within 2 years of the approval to be completed within 4 years. In order to allow the town to properly conduct the process of securing a new developer for this site without risk of the existing permit expiring, the town of Clinton, as owner of the site, 11 Killingworth Turnpike, is requesting a 1-year extension until April 11, 2019 to commence work under the permit. In order to assist the town in this process, we are requesting that this matter be heard at the September regular meeting of the Planning and Zoning Commission. Thank you for your attention to this matter. Sincerely, Bruce and Farmer, First Selectman, Town of Clinton.
Eric, do you want to just give a little more?
Yeah, I mean, obviously, everybody here knows the time and effort that was put into getting this approval. We don't know what the future will hold for this site. However, given the amount of time and effort that was put into getting this approval, it has potentially some value in marketing the property, and it would be a shame to lose the approval while we're trying to figure out what comes next. There's no requirement that whoever purchases the property next use this approval. They can come in and get whatever other approvals they want. But if someone does want to use this approval, it obviously adds value not to have to come back and start all over again with a new process. So essentially the town is trying to increase its position, increase the value of the property for purchase of sale by extending this period. Because otherwise, as of April of next year, which is not really that far away, if work hasn't started, which obviously it's probably not going to be started, the entire process would have to start all over again from scratch, and we just don't think that's a useful thing to do. 1 year is the most they can get at a time, at least, under the regulations to extend, which is why they asked for 1 year. That's probably good enough to get the process rolling again. Again, there's no requirement that anyone who buys it does what's in the existing special exception, but at least the opportunity will continue to be there as long as the permit is valid.
So won't the town lose the permitting application fees from the new buyer, prospective new buyer?
Well, yes, they would lose the application fees,
We
but
will lose the application.
We lose.
Not pay.
well, the town, we're all the same town, right? Anybody who applies has to pay those fees. However, it was, the soft costs involved in getting those approvals were to the tune of $2.5 million. So if we can increase the sales value of that property by $2.5 million, or even $2 million, or $1.5 million, that seems like something that is worth whatever we're missing in application fees.
In my view, that's hypothetical. As far as, so how much fees did we get for this application approval so far, approximately?
I don't remember.
And deposit. We have his deposit,
Well,
right?
the deposits are keeping anyway.
It also wouldn't affect planning and zoning.
No, I'm just asking.
The deposit is a different issue. The
Just the
application,
permit itself, we costed them approximately $50,000?
50, about 50,000, yes.
So we will be losing that.
Mr.
Hopefully,
Chair, you might be losing it, but they're not doing all the work.
Yeah.
The theory of the permit is that land use is going to be
Right, it's
working
gonna
all
cover
the
their
time on
costs.
this. They already did all their work.
Well,
Mr. Chairman, I'd like to make a motion to approve the permit for project to Mill Pond and extend it for 1 year.
All right, first, second, discussion.
The only reason I'm doing that is so we can have our discussion.
Yes, thank you.
The reason why I'm questioning, Gary, is because it says, as requested by the property owner,
It's his application.
which is, yeah, but he wants to request for a 1-year extension, as requested by the property owner. He defaulted.
No,
Property owner.
The town of Clinton is the property owner.
Oh, so refer back to us, okay, that's what I was.
It is ours.
that's what I was questioning.
Why does the application then say Mill Pond?
Because
I
that
think
way
it should
it's
say
not-
That was who the permit was granted to originally, but the property owner, town of Clinton,
But they had a they could apply for this special extension because they had financial interest.
they were a contract partnership, yes.
But that's null and void.
Absolutely, yes.
So
It should say Mill Pond.
they can't be a legal applicant.
No, but the special exception, the original special, they are not a legal applicant, they're not applying.
The reason it says it on here is because that way it continues to track on the same
Yeah.
thing. So in 20 years, when somebody
That's
goes
why I
back
was
to look at
confused also.
it still tracks the same way, and they can follow it through all the
Because it was
paperwork.
granted to.
Right.
The original application's name was Mill Pond,
Right.
because that was the applicant, Mill Pond. The owner always was and remains town of
I
Clinton.
understand that.
It's
So-
just-
We should do everything we can, okay, to facilitate getting this project going. Because as the Planning and Zoning Commission, okay, we caused the problem when it collapsed. Delaying it, everybody was putting their 2 cents in, when we should have just gone by what the statute says, but they met the regulation, when it went to land use, and they approved, and they went through the whole rigmarole of checking all the, everything that had to be checked. That should have been it. We should have either said yes, all right, it meets the requirement, and approved it, and that's why we lost it. Political bullcrap.
Okay.
Aside from that, I mean, we're in an environment here where we're in an economic environment where the majority of these projects aren't necessarily going forward with bells and whistles. It's very difficult to get these developers in here to do so. It's a retail operation, very difficult to find these people to do it. You know, this granting of an extension, which allows them to utilize some of the stuff and the work that's already been done, will then allow developers to walk into something and say, hey, listen, we're not starting from ground zero. You know, let's get into this with our feet walking, and in that way, it may make it simpler for them to get in and to do what they're looking to do. To just sit back and say, well, you know, the reason why this is here or not here is irrelevant right now. The issue on the table is grant the extension, let somebody come in here, and let us market this property to other people that can come in and say, here, this is what we're able to do. We've done work on this. We've spent hours on this. Eric spent land use. Everybody spent a lot of work on this project. And you know, we're giving them the opportunity to walk in here to do something. We have a property sitting there that's vacant. It's a retail operation. I mean, you know, we got to do whatever we can to market this property and to get somebody in there to develop this property, which at the end of the day will help our town and help the bottom line. Instead of worrying about application fees up front, well, let's worry about the tax base that this is going to generate for our town.
I personally disagree with that because I would rather have whoever buys this property, we should have an opportunity to ask enough questions up front, which we probably missed last time, to make sure that we do it right.
I don't think we're giving up the
I
opportunity
think
to
the
ask questions.
sale of the property is separate from the extension. My concern was that somehow this would be a benefit to the failed developer.
No.
But I see that it isn't, and I'm willing to go along with this.
Mr. Chairman?
Yes.
I don't know what I don't know what the downside is here. I worked on a project, a $36 million project that failed at the beginning stages. They had put $10 million in. After that, it's very common to have all this groundwork laid out, and then somebody comes in, it has a lot more value because Mr. Resnikoff already spent $2 million. Whoever wants to buy it doesn't have to spend the $2 million. At the end of the day, there's no downside for the town.
All the soft data
Well, it's
belongs to
correct.
Resnikoff.
Christine?
All the soft
And,
belongs to Resnikoff, not to the
and we
town.
seem to have an agreeing partner that is willing to give some of this information, because he could hold it in his hand, like the...
Well, I say two things, one of which is, the permit itself is the town's. okay? It belongs to the property owner, it runs with the land, so it's not Resnikov's, it's ours.
Fair enough.
Second of all, the documents, now that they have been submitted, yes, they are copyrighted and owned by the submitter. That said, it doesn't take that much to roll over the plan and say, oh, this is what they look like, make some minor changes so you don't get into copyright trouble, and come in. I mean, the drainage calculations are going to be the drainage calculations, no matter who does them, and they're already there, printed on the sheet for you. So the hard data that Mr. Resnikov did doesn't change. I mean, I understand that the proprietary plans go with him, but a lot of hard calculations went into doing this, and those hard calculations don't go away simply because the proprietary plans belong to Mr. Resnikov. So,
Christine?
I have a number of concerns, but first thing I'd like to do is address the delays. If anything, we expedited this application. We bent over backwards for this applicant to the point of they only had one public hearing. We didn't even extend the public hearing for them. So to say there are any delays, that is a misnomer. First of all, as our attorney, our town attorney addressed this, they got back to us with comments regarding moving forward with any sort of agreement to allow.
I don't believe it was sent to
It
the
was not?
attorney.
you guys the town attorney or commission?
Commissioner.
The planning and zoning commission's attorney.
It wasn't sent to them because this is, it's not a legal, I'm not sure what the legal issue was. I mean, if you'd like to send it out to them, we can send it out to them.
So you don't see anything legally an issue by extending the permit for this, you know?
I mean, honestly, permit extension requests are something that you get all the time. And I can't remember the last time one was ever denied, here or any other commission. You know, particularly given the economy over the last 8, 9, however many years, projects have taken longer than anticipated, and people come in for extension requests all the time. So,
Well, the applicants come in for extension. This is highly unusual that we're actually looking for a new applicant to come in and when we're the property owner.
yes, but ultimately, the fundamentals here are the same, which is that tough economic times have caused the applicant to be unable to continue. The property owner is now trying to remarket the land. And again, this is not something that's, Clinton's the first that's ever faced this. This has been faced by others. Most developments of this sort are done under option, like this. And if the option collapses, then the property owner has to turn around and sell to somebody else. Not uncommon, just unusual in this case because it's a town of Clinton versus somebody else. But in those circumstances, routinely, property owner comes back to the Planning and Zoning Commission and says, couldn't make it happen, I need an extension. And again, I'm struggling over my 20-something years of doing this to come up with a single time that a commission has ever said no. Just because the rule on even obtaining a 5-year extension, a special exception if they were to need it, would be you'd have to demonstrate a fundamental change in circumstance to deny the extension. And I don't know what the fundamental change in circumstance has been other than the collapse of the property, the developer here, which is sort of a separate issue. But the property itself hasn't changed within the last year and a half. So I'm not sure what the basis would be for not giving them the extra time.
So if we were to continue with this application, keeping this application, so the Planning and Zoning Commission had made a motion to allow you to sign off on future changes.
Minor changes.
Minor changes.
Would that also carry over with this application?
You can revoke that any time.
So we would have to, that we can make a motion to revoke that with the approval of this
Absolutely. In
extension.
fact, to sort of go in, to give a bit of history here, which is now, we can talk about because it's all in the past. The property manager, the property owner for Big Y, at the last minute was called in by Resnikov to try and put money into the project. And we met in Bruce's office. I sat down to across the table from the Big Y property manager. And he said, if I'm going to come in, I want this to look a lot more like a Big Y shopping center and a lot less like what Mr. Resnikov's proposing. And I said, well, what would that look like? And he explained, well, I would take about a 40,000 square foot grocery store and I would make that a bigger grocery store so that the pedestrian walkway would have the back of the big Y facing. And I said, that's not what my commission approved. I couldn't approve that administratively. They'd have to come back here for a new commission approval. And he said, basically, thank you very much, goodbye, and that was the end of it. So I was, even before, I felt I was constrained by what I could or could not approve, by the limits of what a minor modification was. But if you would like to revoke my authority going forward as part of the extension, I have no problem with that whatsoever.
The other question is regarding the bonuses and amenities. So this applicant did not provide us any amenities other than a grass area, which really goes to the permeable area. Can we put any sort of,
No, you're only being asked for extension request. You're not being asked for any amendment to the permit whatsoever. That would be the applicant's, in this case, the town of Clinton's responsibility to ask for. So you're being asked for essentially a yes or no on the extension. You can give it less than 1 year if you want. You can give it a month or 6 months or 8 months. That's within the power of your authority. Amending the underlying approval at this point is not presently what the commission is being asked to do.
so we cannot amend the approval to ask for additional bonuses that would have to go to the board of selectmen, is that what you're saying?
Yeah, I mean, it's quite, again, if you would like to make recommendations, you certainly are free to make recommendations, but what Mr. Farmer asked for was just one thing. That one thing was extend the existing permit 1 year. That's a yes or no thing. If you think that the permit should not be extended because you think it was a bad permit, that's one issue. But to go back now and try and reopen the permit to change the conditions of approval isn't what the applicant's asked for. It's not what's on the agenda. I think that would require an entirely new application or a new request by the applicant to do that.
So typically when the applicant comes in, they provide us with an application, and we can apply conditions to that. I don't see why this would be any different circumstance, applying a condition to.
We've already approved it.
Because they're not submitting an application. They're submitting a request.
This application, we're talking about their.
This isn't even an application. This is a request to extend the start date of an existing approval. The termination date, the 5-year termination date, has not changed. They haven't requested an extension of the permit. The underlying permit remains as it was. They're just asking for 1 more year to start the work under the existing permit. So, no, this is not an extension of the permit. That's a separate thing in the statute. That's covered by the statute. This is, our regulations say you have 2 years to start. They are asking for 3 years to start. That's a different animal in my mind. Again, you may feel differently, but they're not asking for renewal of the permit. They're not asking for an extension of the permit. They're just saying, can we have more time to start the original permit within the parameters of the time that was granted, so.
A bunch of people that have questions, and we can come back and we can ask another one, but we'll just, Carl, you?
I'm just going to say that, in my younger years, I did a lot of development, right? And sometimes the prime person that's going to purchase the property, comes up with plans and so on, and then that deal falls apart. So as a business person, okay, in which the town has to handle it this way, they have to look for the next person to develop the land. And you just don't throw roadblocks into something you're trying to sell. And that's what they're talking about right now, talking about how can we modify. We had 3 major vacant properties, okay? We haven't been able to get the other 2 going. We had this one going, then we blew it again. There's more to it. There's the buildings that down on Route 145. We're gonna have a ghost town here if we don't work with people going forward.
We didn't blow up anything.
So, I think that's a matter of debate, but,
And we don't need political talk at this particular point, all right? Right? The first selectman candidate over there coming up with all this kind of gibberish, right?
all right, let's move on.
Listen, I'm game for anything to facilitate this you
Don't
know.
tell me go on, I'll say what I want to say, all right? You say what you want to
Mr.
say.
Mr. Chairman.
Yes.
To facilitate this sale, and we've done in the past, people who took extensions and, 3 years, 4 years, and, and we gave the extensions. If this extension is to facilitate the sale of this building and other people are looking for it, I say go for it.
Okay. Now, your
I have a question, I think, for Eric.
Go ahead.
This is not, we've never had an application from the First Selectman to extend a special permit.
Okay.
Does the
that's-
First Selectman have the authority on his own to ask that?
That was taken, action was taken at a board of selectmen meeting.
It was taken, okay, that answers the question, it was a formal action.
Yeah, they had a meeting in which he
Okay.
presented this as an issue, and they voted to allow him to do this.
All right, Aman, then Gary, then Christine.
So I just want quite some, again, Eric, so Mill Pond, or the rest of the guy, is gone.
Gone, yes.
That's not the application, that has nothing to do with this
You
request.
will, I doubt you will never see Henry
We should
Resnick.
change that name.
Yeah, I mean, at this
So-
point, I don't expect Henry Resnick to have any involvement with this property litigation.
The whole, what we're trying to achieve here is to have, reuse this permit to market it to the next prospective buyer.
Everything
That's
is
done.
all we are doing.
That's all you were doing. I mean, honestly, the day that even rumors that Resnick was backing out happened, there are other people who are expressing interest, and this is just.
I'm not discussing the rumors.
Okay.
So at this point, all we are trying to do is facilitate the marketing process moving forward. And if within that application or within that permit that we have already approved, if there's any tweaking that needs to be done, the applicant will have to come back to planning and zoning and request that.
Well,
No.
that goes back to Christine's issue of revoking my authority to approve minor modifications.
I'm not talking about minor changes. I'm talking about that 40,000 grocery store becomes
Yes.
60,000.
Yeah, at that point, they would have to come back here.
Okay, sounds good. Thank you.
Okay, Gary.
It's almost bizarre that I'm sitting at the table, and I think this is what Mr. Neary is trying to talk about, is that we have something in front of us that is a no-brainer. I appreciate your question as to, let's make sure we have our I's dotted and our T's crossed legally. But with all due respect, one of our commissioners is literally, from my point of view, why do we continually throw up these roadblocks? Why do we look for or try to even create the problem for the people? This is why, and everybody can shake their head, but I'll be the first to say, I'm not 100% right. But this is why Clinton is perceived as not a friendly town for developers. Just look at the conversation we're having tonight. All we want to do is extend a permit so that somebody can pick the plans up off the table and maybe come and do it for our town. And we're finding 20 different reasons. Exactly, due diligence. But if you're sitting on this commission, you're supposed to already know a lot of the answers that you're asking. So, for instance, that this is not an application. In my opinion.
Let's move the question, huh? You hear all night
Make a
talking
motion
about
to
the
move the
same thing.
question.
So,
I second it.
in the middle speaking, so you
She
can.
was recognized, so.
So first of all, as Mon pointed out, it is due diligence, and this Planning and Zoning Commission did expedite this application, which did evolve very quickly. So I feel as though it is our duty to the town of Clinton, when this is a town-owned property, to not rubber stamp everything that walks in the door. The reason our town is unfriendly is because we're working with regulations from the 1970s. That is why developers don't want to come to this town, and we should all recognize that, and that's why we need to update our zoning regulations.
You've been here for 8 years.
Okay.
Chairman?
Would you like to make that motion?
Chris had a question.
I mean, I did have a question. I mean, we seem to just go through the same things. When we're presented with these, in motions, and somebody makes a motion, we start talking about things that we really don't have any control over right now. I understand due diligence, we're asking about extending and granting an extension for 1 year so we can try to market this property. At the end of the day, if this can work out for our town, it benefits our town and the people of Clinton because it is a tax base that we need.
We need
badly. Okay, so we're all talking about Clinton, 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 but at the end of the day, we need to be open to extending, granting an extension and working with this new developer so that we can get this tax base built up. That's the problem. I mean, you look around, we don't have a tax base. And it seems to be walking away. They walked away again, and no blame being put anywhere, but the fact is, we need to keep it here. We need to do what we need to do in order to be friendly enough so that when somebody does come in, that we're open to doing these things. And again, not finding ways to say no, 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 but say, hey, listen, I'll just work with you to get this done.
All right, let's take a vote. All those in favor of extending the 1-year extension, please raise your hand. Please say aye.
All right.
Adam,
Carl,
Carl,
Gary,
Jerry,
Alan,
Chris,
Connor, Christine,
So now it is for 3 years, is that
it's
correct?
unanimous.
So it
It's for
was
1 year.
it's a 1-year extension, it will
Total 3
expire in April of 2019.
Mr. Chairman, after all of that, right, what do we end up doing?
We got a unanimous vote, so.
We did.
We had a discussion.
You know,
Yeah.
There's discussion that.
We got
Very active.
I'm not
All right, we're
talking.
moving on, number 4.
No talk.
Number 4, REF 17-063,